when it comes to Quant, why do I think there's actually a pretty big victory that a lot of people haven't really talked about? Even though nothing I say is financial advice, it is clearly not about the price because, I mean, come on, right? The altcoin space as of right now is not doing the best, even though Quant is actually holding up a lot better when compared to, let's say, back in, you know, April. But I'm just saying, when the price was around $60 at that time, whereas right now it's around 80. But still, even despite that, back in September, Quant announced that Quant was chosen to build core infrastructure for the UK's tokenized sterling deposits. Why do I think it's a pretty big victory? Because Quant, it's typically sometimes known as to a lot of my friends that, oh, they're not really doing anything. But I think this type of stuff really kind of indicates that, yeah, they are kind of doing something, and that is pretty impressive in my opinion. Now, again, clearly when it comes to the price, it's not doing the best as of right now, but I'm just talking about purely the fundamentals when it comes to that victory, right? Because I think it is actually a pretty big victory that not many people talked about, so I kind of want to mention it nonetheless, and I think it's especially important for me to kind of sometimes think about and reminisce a little bit about the accomplishments that Quant has been able to do, and not so just focus all in when it comes to the price, because I am not holding Quant just for a week or 2 weeks. If I was, that's a totally different case, but that is not the case, right? I'm actually believing in the project for the long term. So at a moment in time in which altcoins are not doing the best, when the price isn't doing the best, right? It's easy to sometimes, at least, to kind of ignore a project and not really care about it because, again, the price is not doing the best. But then, if I take a look at the fundamentals, I take a look at what it's been able to achieve, sometimes it keeps me to, still thinking about the project, right? It just doesn't make me give up like that. That's not the case, So then this is why I like what I'm seeing when it comes to Quant. Again, when it comes to the price not doing the best, but I can't control that, right? I cannot demand Quant to do this or do that. The only thing I can do is literally control myself, which is what I'm doing. Again, even though nothing I say is financial advice, $2,000 is around a 23x from here. Market cap at that point would be around 24 billion considering current circulating supply. Still, around $80 billion less than BNB's market cap even at one point back in 2021. I'm not even talking about right now, right? BNB back in 2021 reached a market cap of over 100 billion. And personally for me, I just think Quant is a lot more dynamic than something like that. This is just my point of view. And when I take a look at that, sometimes people like to say, no, man, 2000 is around a 23x from here. Well, okay, I get that, but if my intention is the dollar cost average, if the price was not doing the best, I don't know why I'd complain. And what I take a look at is this. The sentiment right now is not just affecting when it comes to Quant in terms of the price. A lot of altcoins are not doing good. So if I know that, the way to take a look at it is that instead, when I take a look at the viability of a project, right? If I take a look at its long-term future, what do I focus on when the price is not doing good? I take a look at the space it's focused on and the fundamentals. And when I take a look at Quant, I think it is actually focused on such an amazing space because if we take a look at the Quant network and the Overledger OS, I think basically when I take a look at something like that, Quant is kind of helping give developers, I think, more options when it comes to building applications. Let me explain why when it comes to this, right? Because the Quant network, again, is made up of the Overledger OS and the Overledger network. But then the Overledger OS allows something called a multi-chain application to be built. So it's an application that is built on top of multiple blockchains and not just one. This, I think, is a pretty amazing, thing because, of course, as a developer, probably, let's say I was one, I just don't want to be stuck building on only just one blockchain, right? So then having the ability to, let's say, build on multiple blockchains instead of just, again, one blockchain, I think that's pretty game-changing. Adoption isn't the best, I'm totally aware of that. It's not like Quant is the most popular project out there, even though despite Quant being actually ranked around number 70 when it comes to top projects right now in terms of market cap, which I find actually very impressive, but still, it's not the biggest project by any means, it's not the most popular, but I think it's very impressive what it can do through the Overledger OS when it comes to the Quant network. Now, there's also the Overledger network when it comes to the Quant network, right? On top of the Overledger OS, or should I say in addition to. And the Overledger network is made up of the Overledger OS users, and on there, these Overledger OS users can share their data, their resources, and monetize them. So it's pretty interesting, but then overall, I think the Overledger OS is something that I primarily do want to focus on. And when I take a look at something like Quant, what I like about it as well is that the fundamentals is not overly complicated in a sense where some other projects out there it just seems very complicated to understand, but this one it just doesn't feel that way to me, which I actually think works to the advantage of something like Quant, not against it, because even though at first glance having a project that is simple and easy to understand may seem like, oh wow, that means the project isn't doing much, but then I actually think if the project is more easy to understand. If I think that it's more simple, I think it's going to work towards its advantage because imagine if I don't know what Quant is about, how can I believe in it? You know what I mean? If I was just solely taking a look at the price chart of Quant, I would not think it's good, right? The price chart of Quant isn't that good, to be honest, actually, as of late. And actually, ever since I started talking about it, it wasn't doing the best either. But if I only take the look at that, I wouldn't actually know the fundamentals. So again, when I take a look at something like Quant, I like the fundamentals, and I don't think I've seen an altcoin season during this cycle, which is why I haven't given up. I'm not worried, I'm not concerned when it comes to Quant. I'm still staying patient. I'm still doing what I've been doing throughout this entire time anyways, and I'm just dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting. Keep in mind, the maximum supply of Quant is around 14.8 million, whereas if we take a look at Bitcoin, the maximum supply is 21 million. Now, this is more so an apples to oranges comparison because Bitcoin is always going to be more popular than Quant. I'm totally aware of that. But I think that, if anything, kind of showcases the rarity of Quant, relatively speaking. Now, again, Quant isn't the most popular project out there, but the maximum supply is kind of low, I think, in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, even besides that point as well, why am I still believing in this space, right? Because even if I take a look at it historically speaking, altcoins typically, as a worst case scenario, they usually peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event. April of 2024 was when the last Bitcoin halving event happened, right? But again, 18 months from then is actually October this year, which granted, altcoins are actually not doing that good right now when we're in October. But that's based off history. Who knows what's going to happen to Quant a month, 2 months, 3 months later? But if it did look better than right now, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me because things could be different, We just don't know moving forward. Like, for instance, a year ago, Bitcoin was looking completely different than right now. So, again, I'm not saying Quant is Bitcoin or something like that. I'm not saying that, again. But then things could be different, which is why I'm staying patient. I'm holding and just waiting. Now, granted, that historical example that I used before when it comes to altcoins peaking as a worst case scenario, usually, clearly that hasn't seemed to be the case this time. But, it could always be different. It could maybe be, if it ever even wants to happen, sometime near the end of this year or even next year, like around March or something at that time of 2026. But whenever that case is, or whenever that time frame could be, there's one thing I can do, and that's just control myself. So I'm going to be dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting. But nonetheless, I think Quant fundamentally has been making pretty big strides, and I'm very impressed. Price-wise, again, hasn't been doing the best, but I think sometimes the price isn't necessarily tied to the fundamentals, at least in some cases that I do see, because I don't feel like Quant became worse. I feel like actually Quant fundamentally became better. So this is why I'm staying patient, I'm holding, and I'm just waiting. And that's pretty much about it. And I want to say thank you for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you all have a nice day. It's Willie the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.